A Swift Kicking Ass, episode 37.
Welcome to a Swift Kicking the Ass podcast, hosted by lifelong friends Tom Stewart and John Curren. Today's episode is a special feature covering Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. Hey, John.
How you doing?
Once again, we're testing out Blab, the newest, hottest, supposedly, social media platform out there. It's really cool because you can have up to 4 people at once into a Blab. And normally we use our Google Hangouts in order to record our show, but now we're going to try to move over to Blab. Just like it. It's really easy to use. It's friendly. Today we're we're talking once again about Robert Greene's best-selling book, The 48 Laws of Power. And each episode, we try to at least take one law and talk about that law in depth and how it applies to real life and how you can use it in your life to avoid being played and how to play others. Not so much how to play others, but really how to survive, because this is stuff you see every day. Today's law is Law 23, Concentrate Your Forces. And here's the judgment out of the book. Conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more in finding a rich mine and digging it deeper than fleeting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. When looking for sources of power to elevate you, find one key patron, the fat cow, I like that, who will give you milk for a long time to come. John, this law means a lot to both of us, I know, because we've been facing our own issues. And even the whole fat cow thing's a whole nother part of it, especially internet marketers, I think will appreciate that. I know if anyone follows Dean Jackson, he talks about having one client and milking them over and over and over. But what I see out of this, at least my take on it, is this applies a lot to focus. And I know we had an issue with this, where we started doing our podcast and we got off and started making products and creating all kinds of membership sites. And, we had all these different properties, these different web properties, trying to do social media and all these different ones. And we started getting scattered and we were kind of losing our focus of where we should be. So we said, you know what, let's stick to what our original plan was just having a podcast, have our podcast, grow an audience, and we'll go from there. This is 2 friends that are talking about, subjects that are important to us. So we went back to our roots. We basically canceled out any energy that we put into our other properties. Even though they're good properties, it's just we didn't have the time for them, and we want to focus on one thing.
Yeah, I think too, especially with podcasting, it's very easy to lose focus, and it's also very easy to operate in a vacuum. And this is one of the reasons why I just love Blab, because it's really nice to have an audience, have people out there listening and, putting the hands up and just absolutely love it. It it lights a fire under your ass to do the best you possibly can. And it just changes the environment, I think, for recording. But going back to that fat cow, now, this law in particular makes me think about power and our sources of different power. And both Tom and I work, we have full-time jobs, and we really do podcasting because we love doing it. The reward is in having our listeners say, you know what, I never thought of it that way. And that means a lot to us. So podcasting is definitely a source of power for us in our lives, but so is our full-time job. And you think about, what happens if that cow stops giving milk? And it's, fat cows are great as long as they're producing. But what happens when that power starts shifting and you start losing that power? I think that's something important for people to think about and concerning the concentrated.
Well, both of us have gone through that when we, at different times in our careers, we've lost our gigs before, and when that happens, man, it throws you for a loop because that's your livelihood.
Yeah.
And for either one of us, we have professional positions. John's in healthcare, but and I'm in the radio. I'm in a broadcast engineer, a very specific job. So it's not like I can just go to another place very easily. Sometimes you have to move a market, and I'm not willing to move because my family is rooted here in South Florida. But when that happens, man, it throws you for a loop, and you start to wonder, say, I understand multiple streams of income and not keeping all your eggs in one basket because, you become reliant on that.
Yeah. I'm somewhat of a generalist. I've been involved in healthcare for over, 25 years now. I started really young when I was about 18. And, I was told very early in my career that the more I could jump around to different departments and the more I could learn about the organization and become a generalist, the more valuable I would be to that organization. So that's what I've done. And it has served me very well. But about 5 years ago, my position was eliminated. And at that time, my wife and I were working a financial plan, trying to dig ourselves out of debt. And for the first time, we were getting traction. And the reason we were getting traction is that we were focused specifically on, paying off our debt and then getting some money in the bank. We had very young children at the time, and it was tough. So we're getting traction, and then what happens? Boom, life hits, and my job is eliminated. And I think, holy crap, what am I going to do here? And at that moment, that's when I really decided, you know what, I'm going to do anything I have to support my family. And it doesn't really matter what I do. As long as I keep meeting these financial goals, keep moving forward on our plan, get ourselves out of debt. And that's what I did. And within 2 months, not only was I back with the same company, making more money and working at home, but shortly thereafter, I figured out a way to pay off, the rest of that plan. And we paid off over $90,000 in about 2 years, 2.5 year period. And that was focused, dedicated effort that got us there. But, going back to the career part, we're kind of told to be generalists and do whatever our employer needs us to do. And that works well. And I think in that sense, you can be a generalist and succeed. But when you're trying to live life on your own terms, you need to be very focused on what you want out of life. Because if you don't get that and you're not focused on that, everything else just falls apart, I think.
It's funny you talk about that because one of the things when we were going through our issues with focus, I picked up a book. It's actually I picked up the audiobook because I just don't have time to sit and read. I'll nod off and fall asleep. But I do have a big commute. I have 3 hours a day in a car. So I picked up Essentialism by Greg McKeown, I think is his name. It's called The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. But basically, I mean that whole genre of essentialism, it's a view where they set aside. They say there's certain attributes which are necessary to identify and function in order to survive. I mean, there's something that you can always narrow down to its one function. What's that one essential thing that you need, and focus on that one essential. And I really liked it. It resonated with me, so I picked it up, and I suggested you listen to it too. I think it's be worth your time. Now, how the whole book? I don't know. It's a couple principles that could be probably summed up in a chapter or two, but it's so cool.
Yeah, I think we all learn from each other, and anytime you can read a book and get a different perspective, I think that's helpful. It oftentimes is a struggle trying to figure out what to be focused on. Let's just face it, this world, we're so divided in so many different ways, and we're pulled in so many different ways. It's difficult to focus your energy. And unless you know what your priorities are and know what you really want, I mean, you hear that time and time again. What do you want out of life? What do you want to do? And if you can't answer that question, that's probably the biggest part of your problem. I think as far as our podcast is concerned, I know that getting focused and really focusing on the needs of the audience and looking to see how we can grow our audience has been extremely helpful in helping us focus. And I know that when I was going through financial difficulties, working with my wife, we had to be 100% on the same page. And before we developed the plan and settled on the goals, we got into a lot of fights about money. But as soon as we got on that plan and we knew we need to reach for these goals, then the arguments went away, because if a question came up to say, I'd like to spend money on this, I'd really like this, I'd want to do that, we always went back to those two goals. Okay, well, does it pay off our debt, or does it help put money in the bank? If the answer is no to either one of them, or to both or whatever combination it is, if you don't have a yes for one, then the decision's made.
Well, you do that to me all the time, because you know that I love I love internet marketing, and I always want to buy the latest shining object. I see something, I'm like, oh man, that's really cool. I think we could use that. And you always like, well, is it going to help grow our audience? Is it going to, usually I can probably find some way to say, yeah, man, we could do this. But
you just buy it.
Yeah, usually I buy it and tell you, hey man, by the way, I got this cool thing.
But I think that's good, though, at least that if you buy something. I know recently you bought the survey tool, which has been very
beautiful.
good.
I actually love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and but you have that question in your mind before you buy it to say, damn, what is John going to really get on me about this, about buying this? And I think that builds accountability. And you need accountability. And for those of you who don't really understand what I'm talking about, accountability, the way I think about it is, if you have to tell someone that you failed, and you would never want to do that, never tell that person that you failed, that's the person you want to be held accountable to. So Tom and I are in this together. We're lifetime friends. And we really believe that we either both fail or we both succeed. We're going to, help each other out, and that's the way we work, and that's how our partnership works.
We had Mario was in the chat room.
So I don't want to fail, and I know.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step over you.
I was just going to say
There's a slight delay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't want to fail, and I know that you don't either, Tom. And having you as an accountability partner and me for you, I think that worked out great. And I'd suggest that for our listeners, figure out who that person is who you would not want to say you failed, and then tell them what you're going to do and say, hold me accountable.
Absolutely. What I was going to say is Mario in the chat room said that right now he's reading Elon Musk's Tesla, SpaceX, and a quest for a fantastic future and focus, the hidden driver of excellence. He suggested that we should check it out, and I definitely will. Anything that can help us sharpen our edge and sharpen our focus, be laser-like, is definitely helpful, man. Thanks, Mario, for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just amazing to me how many of our listeners really are avid readers, and how important that is to really getting what you want out of life.
Well, it's important.
Learn from each other.
It's important in anything. When you go to college, it's not just getting a degree. You got to become a lifelong learner. If you stop there when you get the degree, forget about it, man. And even if you don't go to college, as long as you're a lifelong learner, if you're self-taught and read, there's so much that you can teach yourself. And I think that's, both of us are lifelong learners.
Yeah.
We have that voracious appetite, but you got to have that in order to, I think, succeed. You look at any successful person, and they're voracious readers or lifelong learners.
If you really stop and think about it, knowledge and skills are the two things that really no one can ever take away from you. If you have a car or a house or any material possession, that can be taken from you very, sometimes very easily. But you will never, ever lose that knowledge and the skills. And that's investing in yourself. And in that way, I think we all need to be fat cows to ourselves.
Right. I always like to bring everything back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just because it's one of my passions. And, one of the things in Jiu-Jitsu is that when you become a black belt, and I'm not a black belt, I'm purple belt, but not a black belt. When you become a black belt, you don't stop there. You don't stop learning. You don't stop training. They say that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning of their journey before they become really successful and master their craft. It's just a proficiency that, if they've probably spent 10 years or more on the mat in order to acquire a black belt. But it's a lifelong journey. And the same goes with learning, and same thing with your career. If you just go to work and just, get by, it's not going to cut it, man. You got to go that extra mile.
In the book, Greene mentions Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. And he said, if you're not in danger, do not fight. And what's interesting to me in that is that sometimes we are in danger, but we have our blinders on. So we're not thinking that we are in danger when we really are. So we should be fighting, and we're not. And Greene time and time again says you need to know yourself and know what's going on around you, especially if you're trying to build power within your life. It's take those blinders off and really be honest with yourself. Life passes by so quickly. Need to make sure that you aren't in danger and doing everything that you can to keep yourself out of danger.
I know you read Robert Greene's Mastery as well, right?
Yes.
And I know the premise for probably the entire book is people become an expert in their field. They say, 10,000 hours before you get to a certain level. But it's more than that. It's being passionate about something. It's about getting into flow and be able to take it, where you just, you're always thinking about it. Whatever it is that you want to do in life, whether it's, being successful at work or family or a certain, you're doing a startup, you got to live, breathe, and eat it, man. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what's important. And it just amazes me how many people out there just go about doing the same thing over and over, day in and day out. I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. There have been times in my life where I just kind of floated, but I think dedicated effort is the best way to solve your problems.
And it burns up energy too. I know that when we were working on our side projects and trying to do too much, that even though, it doesn't seem like you're putting, if you're posting a bunch of stuff on Facebook or Pinterest and you're making all this stuff in different avenues rather than one channel, what happens is you become diluted and you lose energy. So it becomes very tasking and draining, and you don't have energy to put into stuff that really matters, that will really propel your show or business or whatever you're doing forward.
It's interesting too when you mentioned time. There have been times where I'm working on some of our projects where I do just get into the flow. I mean, I sit down, and next thing I know, 3 hours has passed, and it's not from it's not drug induced. it's
a state of mind.
Yeah, it's a state of mind.
My wife Jen, she'll always say that she knows things that I really like is like when I used to do a lot of video editing, and when I would edit, I'd be up to 3 o'clock in the morning because it was a passion of mine. I enjoyed it, and the time just passes by. It's like, man, I'm not even tired. I'm not hungry. I'm just focused on the project at the time, and then you're like, crap, I better go to bed. But it's great. Flow is obviously part of this law.
And time is a level playing field for all of us. All of us have only 24 hours a day in which to work from. And those who are successful, and I've been seeing Mario's comments about here. I love it. I love how people can give us feedback. But we only have 24 hours a day, and those who are successful use that time to their advantage as much as they can. And for instance, if you really stop and look at how you spend your time, I mean, if you're trying to do something and you say, "Oh, I don't have the time," take a look at what you're doing and how you're spending your time. You might find that you're spending a lot of time on the couch watching TV. You're sitting on your ass when you could be doing something else, and learning and moving yourself closer to your goals, because this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of dedicated effort, concentrated force to move you forward.
Hey, Mario, do you want to join into the conversation? We'll give him a minute to.
Yeah, and I like what Mario says too about, everyone is different, and it doesn't mean that someone is better than another. I totally agree with that. I think that no matter what your walk of life is, we all have something to learn from each other. It may not be what to do, it may be what not to do that you learn from that person, but we can all learn from each other. And I used to work for the Veterans Affairs Hospital when I first got out of school, and my first day on the job, all of these directors and associate directors from other hospitals came in for a big meeting, and here I was instructed to take notes and see, and listen and learn, basically sit in the room, be quiet. So that's what I did, and all morning I was just in awe of these people. So just seemed so intelligent, so together, and I had different career goals at that time. I wanted to run a hospital, and so I was just in awe. But when the break came, all the guys went to the men's room, and not to be vulgar, but what I realized is they were just people. They really had been at that job for decades where I was just starting, but they were just people, just like me, just like you, just like everyone else.
Hopefully they washed their hands.
Oh yeah, I wasn't shaking any hands.
I've seen that before, where you have an executive walk in and they'll come out of the stall and they'll just go directly back into the meeting, and you're like, that guy didn't wash his hands. This is like the vice president of the company, and they're shaking hands, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine when you're in the bathroom and there's another guy in the bathroom on a call, and it's like, I just make sure I'm loud. I flush the toilet or do something to make sure that everyone else knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I see that all the time, especially the sales guys.
I'm glad I don't work in the office anymore.
But anything else, John, on this law? I know that the whole fat cow thing, like I said, Dean Jackson talks a lot about it, but it's talking about having one customer as, rather than always trying to acquire new customers, focus on the ones you have, right? And you try to milk them for what they're worth. It's almost like, I know the SaaS businesses for software are popular. Hello, Mary wants to join in.
Great.
How's it going?
Welcome, Mario.
Hey, what's up, Mario?
I appreciate your talk. That's actually very interesting right now.
Thanks, man.
I was just sitting there on the couch and just listening to you guys. I stopped reading the other book that I was reading. But it's true, whatever you guys are speaking, in life, there's a lot of opportunity. We got to know how to take advantage of it. Everybody works totally different. Everybody has a different situation. Everybody sees the world in a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And I think that's key right now, and especially with social media, because right now you guys are doing this. Nobody's actually doing this. If you actually tell someone you're blabbing, people will think you're actually weird, That's why people that have been here and listening to my talks a few times, I've told them we are weird people. We're not the normal kind. So that's actually what people are looking for right now. People that actually think outside of the box. People that are not standard. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's part of the whole premise of our show is living life on your own terms. Buck the conventional thought.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different beliefs out there conventional thoughts and conventional beliefs that everyone just buys into, and they don't really give it a lot of thought. And that's what really kind of prompted the show, is to get this out there and get people thinking about their own lives. I mean, it's fine if 9-to-5 job. I have a 9-to-5 job. I have a family to support, and it would be very difficult for me to not do as they say. But I don't find a lot of passion in that work. I don't get a lot of enjoyment, and I recognize that when I'm not going to be remembered for that job.
Totally understand you.
So, that's why I love podcasting, and I'm passionate about it. And Tom and I, we've been kind of learning from each other since we were little kids. And it's just a great joy to be out here, and I love Blab. We've been doing podcasting now for about 11 months, and without an audience. So now
without an audience?
No, without an audience that can partake. We have an audience.
Yeah, right.
No problem there.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I was just like, okay.
Yeah, we're talking to the wall. No, that's not the case.
I mean, it changes the whole feel, and it's great. I love it.
I mean, it's kind of like, I work in radio, so it's kind of cool. It's kind of like being able to take a call on when you're live on the air. You have someone come in, and I like this, how you can just pop in and you can invite someone in, and there's room for a fourth person if they so wanted to join, so you can have like a intelligent conversation and even a debate. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, I've joined in about I don't know. I've been here for I think about a month, and I've been on hundreds and hundreds of talks, and there's a lot of times that there's so many people in the room that we I don't know, unconsciously we established like an order. So all right, I did my thing, we talked for about 5 minutes, then all right, let's get someone else. And I like it because when you talk to someone on the phone, by email or by text or anything, you don't see their emotions, you don't see what they're thinking,
Right.
So, and I'm sorry, my first language is actually Spanish, so if you guys, I say something weird, you guys just...
Hey, I live in Miami and I work in Spanish radio, so don't worry about it.
And so these guys over here at Blab, they established a connection with people,
Mm-hmm.
And not just people from the U.S., people from all over the world. I'm from Puerto Rico, but I live in the Dominican Republic. And thanks to Meerkat, Periscope, I've actually met so many people, and I've actually done business with a lot of them. And I have actually never seen them physically, just by talking to them right here or talking to them by Meerkat. I don't know if you guys ever used it, but that's another platform for live streaming.
I've heard of it. It's similar to Periscope. Is that correct?
I tried both, but actually I enjoy Meerkat a lot more because it's more interactive, and the text does not fade away, so the person that's actually streaming can come back to the conversation and not lose. It can be doing whatever he's doing, right, and he can come back to you and actually talk to you. It's more interactive.
That's cool.
And it's cool.
And I was gonna. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I was just saying that was cool.
Yeah. No, and now, over here in Blab, everybody is like, I don't know. There's a lot of respect.
Yeah, I noticed that. You don't see so much trolling here, do you?
Really little. Really, really little. These people over here are very respectful. They're open about anything. There's been dilemmas. The other day, I went in a conversation, religion versus atheism. Yesterday, there was one about the politics from the U.S. right now, the debate race. And everybody accepts everyone's view. And that's different because right now, I've actually not made friends, but people that I know from here. And I can't make those relationships with people that are actually on the street right now.
Right.
Yeah, because you're too afraid to be beat up if you say the wrong thing.
I live over here. I live in the Dominican Republic with my wife. We are both psychologists, but we're studying medicine right now.
That's awesome.
But I work at home managing a company from my family. And it's everything. It's done online because we have like a platform and everything. But over here, people are not free in a sense. They're so scared of authority So when they actually look at me and like, Mario, that's your boss. How can you talk to him that way? Dude, he's another human being, like you were saying, John, People have a hierarchy, but I'm going to respect you because I respect you, not because you think that you're the boss and you're actually giving me orders. People actually appreciate people that are actually being sincere to you than people that actually, over here it's called lamboneo. That means like you're trying to suck up to them. People don't like that right now. And we live in a society that everybody asks questions, everybody is always, everybody just questions everything.
I think that's fantastic too, that you're opening the door and you're living by example, and people can see that you aren't afraid to stand up for yourself and speak your mind, and you could do that and be respectful.
Exactly. Diplomatic.
Sometimes you have to too, because I've had that at work where you might get a new boss or something, and they're just pushing you, and you have to stand back sometimes, say, hey, wait a second, wouldn't it be better maybe make a polite suggestion, but once you do that, it's almost like a bully. When a bully picks on a kid and they stand up, they kind of step back and they stop messing with the kid, but if the kid just lays down and lets the bully push him around, that kid's going to get bullied by all the other kids too.
Over here in we're in medical school. And you see these people that are terrified of the professors. And everybody's like, Mario, how the hell did you establish a relationship with these guys that you're just sitting down eating a sandwich and they will actually come out and sit with you and actually eat with you and have a coffee with you? Like, dude, just be yourself, Stop sucking up to them. Just tell them straight out, teacher, you're doing that wrong. Or, hey, I think what you're saying is wrong and this is my opinion. That's what life is actually being involved right now. We don't live in the 60s anymore. We don't live in the 70s anymore, Now it's 2015. Right. It's different. It's a whole different thing. Now you can go to school to learn, but you can actually do the same at home. The difference is just having the degree.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. That's great to hear your point of view and to hear what it's like to live in the Dominican Republic. I'm in Virginia. I live in Virginia. But I was born and raised in South Florida, and I've been slowly moving north. I lived in Atlanta for 15 years, and I've been here in Virginia for 10. So I've got to see a lot. But I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, and I think that so many people are afraid to be themselves, and I think that's a true shame. We all have something to offer. And you shouldn't be scared. I think people are scared of themselves sometimes. And if Blab can help people come out of their shell and become more of them like themselves, I think the world's a better place.
Yeah, I said that Blab is like an unconscious therapy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
When I told John I always take everything back to jiu-jitsu just because it's something that I see the same things that apply. So in jiu-jitsu, when you learn a couple techniques, and then at the end of the class they roll. So basically, all the guys, doesn't matter if you're a black belt, white belt, or whatever, they all roll together, and you learn from each different person, even if they're lower belt. I don't care. I've seen white belts, that give black belts hard time because maybe they come in and they're real powerful, or they're scared, so they use more power and they're crazy. And it takes a while for the black belt to kind of find his groove to submit him, And from each different belt level and this different person, you have a different attribute that you have to be able to encounter. And it's just like a conversation. When you meet someone that has a different viewpoint or lives in a different culture, they're going to bring something else to the game, and you can learn from anyone. It doesn't matter what age you are, how old you are, what your experience level is, and same thing jiu-jitsu, what your belt level is or what you've learned before, you can bring it into life.
I totally agree with you. I've actually done jiu-jitsu before, and I did MMA for about 4 years.
Awesome.
And when I was in New Zealand, so I started and actually fought twice, and I won twice. It was actually pretty cool. It's a nice feeling. And when I went back to Puerto Rico, I went inside this jiu-jitsu class from a Gracie. And I did not have really a big background on jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. I knew about jiu-jitsu. I knew some techniques, but I did more wrestling. Right? My thing was more wrestling. And the teacher said, wow, where do you learn these things? you're fighting a black belt and you're actually at the same level. And sometimes you need to adapt to the situation. You know, you gotta focus, like what you said about the art of war. I'm waiting for it to come, but you know, on Amazon, it gives you like, the book comes and gets to you, you can actually read it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you gotta know your enemy. You gotta visualize. You gotta know everything, even more than your friends. You know, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. And that's how it is in life. That's how it's in competition. Everything. You know, you can trust people, but up to a certain point, because there's a lot of people, and I've actually met a lot of people that can backstab you right in the second. They wouldn't even think about it.
Yes.
And with jiu-jitsu, like that. You can have your friends, but when you have to practice, it's your practice. And people will say, Mario, you're being way too strong with us. Dude, okay, when we have a real situation, when we're actually fighting on a competition, we got to be ready for this. We're not going to take it easy.
Right.
Yeah. I'm curious, have you read The Laws of Power?
The Laws of Power? No, I have not read it. I actually, right now, while I was listening to you guys, I have my Amazon page right now. And I have a cart that's $230 just full of books.
That's awesome. You ought to add this book, man. This book is awesome. We were talking about this, about keeping your friends close. What, on our last episode?
Yeah. I mean, you were using a lot of the laws that Robert Greene talks about in The Laws of Power, and exactly for the same reason. It's unless you know. I mean, once you know what that law is, it really opens your eyes up to how the world works. And it's not like Tom started off the show saying, it's not to learn how to play people and take advantage of them, but you need to be able to protect yourself. And if your eyes are not open, if you don't recognize the danger, then you're setting yourself up.
Yeah, you have to find that loop always.
Yeah, so I would suggest putting that one on your list, because
it's already there.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It basically,
my wife is gonna kill me when those books are out.
Basically, for the guy,
we all relate.
Robert Greene. Yeah, Robert Greene worked in the media mainly. I think he was in Hollywood, and so that's a cutthroat place. And it's he learned, or he recognized that there were certain traits that these people were using, especially the ones that got ahead. And he started studying, and that's when he said, he studied the Prince, Machiavelli. Yeah. And he realized that the same principles that they were using back in the old courts of, yesteryear are the same things that are being used today in corporate offices, So that's what inspired him to write it. And when I found it when it first came out, like in 99. And, like I said, I work in radio. So when I saw that, I opened it up. I said, man, this book. I showed it to my boss, and he goes, this ought to be the employee handbook here, man.
And I noticed that with these writers and authors from this century, they're different, but they all have the same goal, So like John was saying, hey, did you read the book? And no. It's because I've read so many different books that actually relate to the same thing.
Absolutely.
But it just keeps going on. And it's like a reminder every single book, You read one, it tells you something cool, because it's a different point of view. It's a different perspective.
Yes.
But there are things that we already know. We know these things. We just forget about them and not apply them. So while you read them and keep reading them and keep reading them, you're actually unconsciously applying it to your life.
Yeah, that's very true. Robert Greene is a historian, so I would absolutely agree with you that history tends to repeat itself. And if students today knew the importance of history and how it applies to our day-to-day lives, we'd have a lot more history students, I think, because it does repeat itself. And once you open your eyes and you know about that part of history, you know how it happened. When it's happening in today's world, you can recognize that. And to me, I think that's invaluable. You can't put a price on that.
The other thing about him is, this book, like I said, I bought it like 10 years ago, longer than that, actually, 99. it kind of like it went in the bargain bin at the bookstore. You get it for a couple bucks, and all of a sudden it shot up in popularity. And the reason why is because 50 Cent, the rapper, supposedly started talking about it, and it was also getting like popular in prisons and all these other places that people didn't realize it. And so they actually 50 Cent wrote another part of the book called the 50th Law, in cooperation with Robert Greene. And Robert Greene went and met him and hung out with him for months while they were studying to write that law. So it's pretty cool how that book, and then once that happened, the popularity came back.
I was reading, I'm not sure if it was a journal, but they were saying that one of the vast majority of the market of books is actually from prisoners right now, because they have so much time that they just keep ordering and ordering. They don't order them themselves, but their families are sending them to them, Right. So it's a huge market right now. And you know how social media is right now. Let's say 50 Cent starts talking about Bose, everybody's going to think Bose actually endorsed them, and everybody's going to start buying it.
Right.
You know how these things go. It's crazy right now.
John, does that about wrap up our episode? John?
Yeah, I think so, especially because I'm seeing poor internet signal here.
All right, so that's probably why you didn't hear me. Mario, we appreciate you coming in. And, we do this usually around 6 o'clock on Sundays. You're always welcome to pop in.
I followed you guys here, and I followed you guys on Twitter also. So when you guys go online on Twitter and put a notification for Blab, I receive it on my phone.
Cool, man. We look forward to seeing you again, man.
Take care, guys.
Thanks. Later.
Thanks, Mario. Talk to you all later.
And that wraps up. Thanks for listening to the Swift Kicking Ass podcast. John, you have any advice for the people or direction for them?
Well, I'd just say keep investing in yourself and look for ways to keep that fat cow milking for you.
Peace, man. Later.
Later.